Hello Internet, so nice to see you. I got an interesting question about half diminished chords.
I think it makes more sense to voice it as an F minor 6 rather than a D minor 7 flat 5.
So, the D minor 7th flat 5 chord, D minor 7th flat 5 chord, contains the notes D, F, A flat, C. And the F minor 6th contains the note F, A flat, C, D. F, A flat, C is an F minor, and this D is the 6th. Those are the exact same notes, as you can easily see. Okay, there's a D on both, there's an F on both, an A flat on both, and a C on both. So, would it make any difference to call the chord this way or this way? Well, actually, yes, it does make a difference in some situation, and in other situation, it's more convenient to use one name rather than the other. So let's see the difference. It all depends on this musical situation. Theory needs to be applied differently depending on the situation you are in. If I am alone, if I'm just a guitar player, alone or with a singer, and I see those two chords, I will play those two chords differently, because writing the chords this way imply a different bass. If I see a D minor 7 flat 5, I will play the chord this way so that the D note is at the bass. It's the lowest note I play, because that's what's implied in calling it this way, even if all the notes are the same. If I see an F minor 6th, I will play so that the F is at the bass. And there are many different ways of playing this, one being this. Okay, so the sound will be slightly different because the bass is different. This, in some situation, is going to be crucial. It's going to actually make a big difference in the context of the chord progression. And in other situation, it's not going to be much of a difference anyway. But let's take another situation. I am not alone. I am with a full jazz big band, okay? So there's me playing, there's a piano player, there is a bass player, so there's a full rhythm section, okay? Plus a host of other instruments, horn, trumpets, okay? Whatever, great. In that case, I could play either one because the bass player and the piano player are taking care of the bass note. So reading one or the other will be exactly the same. So it really depends on the situation. If it's the guitar, so you personally playing the bass note, or if there is another instrument like the bass player playing the bass note. That will be the first difference, and that's the difference that matters to the musician who is playing the score. But there is another difference that matters to the musician who is writing the score. Okay? Writing those two things is not exactly the same. And indeed, there is also a third way to write these, which is very similar. For instance, I could also write an F minor with a bass of D, in which case this chord and this chord would be exactly the same, because F minor with a bass of D would be exactly that I write an F minor, F, A flat, C, and I put D as the lowest note. So in this case, D minor 7 flat 5 and F minor slash D would be the exact chord. So what would be the difference in that case? The difference is in the strategy that you use when you write the score. Write your song down on a score for other people to read. You expect that on the other side of the score there are competent musicians. For a competent musician, writing D minor 7 flat 5 or writing F minor slash D will be exactly the same. Some will prefer one, some will prefer the other, but it will be exactly the same. On the other hand, you don't always have competent musicians. The reality is that sometimes people are rushed, they don't have time to rehearse the song properly, they are just sight reading through the whole thing, and sometimes they don't even know how to play a half diminished chord, okay? So in that case, it's much better in general to write F minor with a bass of D. Why? Because if you write D minor 7 flat 5, a competent musician will read a flat 5, and we play a D minor 7 flat 5. But somebody who's rushed will just have the time to read D minor 7th, will not read the flat 5, and they will play a D minor 7. And this natural A in the D minor 7 will conflict very sharply with all the other instruments who are playing an A flat in that chord. If you instead write F minor with a bass of D, F minor / D, a rushed musician, and one that is not so competent, will just play an F minor chord. The bass player will play the D note, and everything will work perfectly. There will be no conflict, okay? The guitar player is not playing this D note, but it's not a problem because the bass player or the piano player are taking care of that. So this writing here, F minor / D, it's, if you want, foolproof, okay? It's safer to write in a score that realistically is gonna be played by people who are hobbyists or not professional musicians or less competent than what you would like. It is true that all those three writings have exactly the same notes inside. Okay? But the way people think about that, the way people go about that, the way people play them, and even the way people misunderstand them, if they're rushed, if they have to sight read it, if they're not super competent, is gonna be different. So, first of all, decide between the first two depending on which one is at the bass, D or F. Okay, which one is at the bass. And second, decide between the first and the third depending on which one is easier to read. And typically this one, F minor over D, is easier to read for most people in most situations. That's how you go about half diminished chord and writing half diminished chord. In the video quoted at the beginning of this video, where I took that comment, it was better to write D minor 7 flat 5 because in that case I wanted to express precisely that the bass was D. Okay, and I wanted to make sure it was clear it was a 7th chord. I had no problem about sight reading. I wanted to express the correct theory chord, the correct name that goes for that chord in that theory in there. Again, equivalent, but not exactly the same. If you want to know much more about chords and all these kind of things, and probably much more than what you ever wanted to know, but if you want to know how to work with those chords and make songs with those chords, also have a look at my course, Complete Chord Mastery. This is Tommaso Zillia of mysteryforguitar.com, and until next time, enjoy.